Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another Roll20 review, my written and video review series. Take a look at the marketplace section of online role-playing website, Roll20.net. With this video, I'll be reviewing the campaign book, Vecna, Eve of Ruin, designed by Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided. If you enjoy these videos, consider supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. Of course, this review will be absolutely full of spoilers. Welcome to the big campaign, first campaign release, I should say, of 2024. Vecna Eve of Ruin is it's not our first high-level campaign, Eric. We've had some of those. But it's very rare that we have a high-level campaign. This campaign is designed for 10th to 20th level. So you don't even start this campaign until 10th level, and it stars one of D&D lore's biggest big bads, which most people these days probably know from Stranger Things, even though that's not actually official Vecna, just kind of a fun, it's just a good villain name, I think, too. But no, it's an Archlich, and this is themed around kind of a celebration of, D&D. We're in the 50th anniversary right now, and this is a endgame style event where players are, it doesn't have anything to do with time jumping, though, like the Marvel movie did. Instead, we're jumping through different famous official areas and regions in Dungeons and Dragons lore and settings, all of which I believe we've visited before in some aspect throughout 5e's now like 10-year lifespan that we've had. So it's pretty interesting from that standpoint. I have certainly some complaints about it. Those of you that have already seen Vecna Eve of Ruin could probably guess what some of my complaints are. But as part of this video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into this campaign. I'm going to showcase what it looks like in Roll20, but I'm also going to be reviewing the adventure itself and what I think about the campaign, what works and what doesn't work. So strap yourselves in for a fairly lengthy review, because these are the biggest reviews that I do on the channel, because these are the big main marquee main courses for those of us who play D&D and enjoy the official 5e product. So first of all, what do you get if you purchase the D&D Vecna Eve of Ruin? I don't know why, by the way, it has to say D&D at the front of this Roll20, and I'll get into why that's a little bit confusing when we get to the art pack in a second. It is $29.99 currently on the marketplace. It includes 11 chapters, a pretty big book, 25-foot battle maps, 8 10-foot battle maps, which are subdivided so that they all work out with the spacing. That just basically means they'll be smaller than what you're used to. 2 illustrative region maps. These are like overland maps that you can show your players, but you're not designed to actually battle on. Over 50 magic items, including the Rod of 7 Parts, which is basically the main quest in this campaign. Over 100 monster sheets with token art and player art handouts, over 40 of which are new from the monster manual, but may not be new if you've been purchasing all of the D&D books so far. For example, some of them would be from Spelljammer. I think it's Boo's Astral Menagerie was the name of the monster book there, or from like Eberron, because again, this uses monsters that are unique to various settings. So I think there are a couple of them that are completely new to Eve of Ruin, but they're actually pretty rare. But if you only have the monster manual, then those are about 40 of them that are completely new. Over 40 named NPCs with token art, that is a lot, and over 60 player art handouts. Also included is the Vecna Eve of Ruin Compendium. In terms of this, a lot of adventure books have like a source book component to them. For example, like Baldur's Gate Descent to Avernus is a big thing on Baldur's Gate. Rime of the Frost Maiden obviously is all about adding some more context to Icewind Dale. This one does not, probably has like the least amount of information, even though it contains the most amount of like campaign settings. But what you get with the compendium is basically a character dossier on like the major NPCs that factor into the story. So for example, Vecna, Kaios the Vampire, Tasha, and Illustriel, the Warden kind of actually doesn't, but we'll get into that, kind of spoiler. Basically these major characters, and includes all this background information, interesting stuff. And also we include the secrets tracker in the compendium instead of in the adventure itself. It might be included in the adventure itself, but for some reason it's also located in the compendium. The compendium just means that's something that is added to your game that you can pull up in any game versus having to specifically be in the Vecna Eve of Ruin game itself to be able to access that information. So that's where that comes from. In fact, if we go, there's a little section right here. It's Vecna Eve of Ruin compendium links, and that allows you to access that information from within the journal entry as well. It also includes the Vecna Eve of Ruin art pack, which is included right here. The art pack means also you can grab that from any game that you have in Roll20. You can use these decoupled from the game itself and just drag all of these tokens. This token art is really, really, really damn good. Some of my favorite token art I think I've seen in a long time, and gives really one of the biggest amounts of token art. This is something that Roll20 has been very, very awesome with lately, like in the last maybe 2 years or so, where they've really taken like every single piece of art where there's a character face or monster or whatever in the book and turned that into a token. The only confusing thing is, again, Roll20 titled it D&D Vecna: Eve of Ruin art pack, which means if you're trying to find this and you've got a million entries in your art gallery, it's not under V for Vecna, it's not under E for Eve of Ruin, because I tried all those. It's under D for D&D Vecna Eve of Ruin, which hardly any others actually appear. I think it looks like Dragons of Stormwreck Isle is the only other one that appears under the D&D moniker. I'm not sure why they did it like that, but that's where it goes. And you can see all of these amazing token art. There is over 40 handouts, which are included in the art gallery as well. And then about 200 of these tokens, which again include everything that ever appears in that campaign. And they're in two different styles, which includes the kind of what has become the default use for NPCs and monsters, kind of this two-toned red-yellow, and then also one that I think is meant to be maybe for like player character or something, which is this blue background. So really like 400 tokens in total. That is a ton of content you get just with the art gallery alone. All right, so with the adventure itself, first I can jump into the, perhaps we'll show off the dynamic lighting, the Roll20 tips. This is something you're really only going to be able to take advantage of if you are a Roll20 subscriber. You can use Roll20 completely for free. But if you are a subscriber, dynamic lighting is pretty much the reason why you want to be a subscriber, because it looks really great. You can sit here and test how different tokens work by going into vision mode and just basically testing all these different aspects of how it works in an interactive map. This is something they've been doing for, again, probably the last year or two. They've added this big old map right here. There's like a fantasy version, and there's also like a modern version, I think, with like the Marvel RPG and other systems, where it just allows you to look at how secret doors work, how windows work, the fact that, line of sight is blocked in some cases, and tokens are blocked in other cases. It's a really awesome feature. I'm not really going to include it as official pro anymore because now it's become a standard thing, but I will call attention to the fact that it's very nice. Same with the Roll20 tips page. This has been around for a while. This kind of helps you give an overview if you're new to Roll20 and how things work, and frankly, people like me who probably still need a refresher on how various systems work, how to use initiative, how to change certain tokens. For example, if you have shapeshifters, how you can actually change their token in different shapes. That kind of thing is important. And how the token action works, how you can open character sheets by using all these like shortcuts and things. So good stuff throughout there. All right, I know what you all really want to hear, which is my overall thoughts on this campaign and kind of breaking down how everything works. This is the token page, by the way. You can always drag whatever you need from the journal. Let me collapse everything first. And okay, there's the creatures. So if you want to grab something, you can just grab it, and there we go. There's the token, or you can copy and paste from here. The token page is nice also, as always, because you can see the size difference in creatures, which you can see. This is an epic campaign, so you get to fight some big-ass cool creatures, which is awesome and definitely a pro going forward with here. So, by the way, if you have not, you can check out my review of the Prologue adventure, Vecna, Nest of the Eldritch Eye, also available on Roll20, and I have much different thoughts about that adventure, but go do check out that review. So in Vecna, Eve of Ruin, Vecna is up to his old tricks in being a villain, trying to destroy the multiverse and then remake it in his image. Kind of like Doctor Doom in Secret Wars, I guess, although I don't know if I should spoil Secret Wars. It's about a 10-year-old comic storyline at this point, but I think Doctor Doom's a little way cooler, more interesting than Vecna. Vecna's just kind of a one-note villain, unfortunately, which is part of my problem here. But you don't even actually get involved in the main story necessarily until after the first chapter, which I do appreciate. I think there's a cool opening with the way that this adventure begins. So the adventure begins with the characters. Again, they're already level 10. We are already, badasses in our respective fields. We're superheroes, essentially. Interestingly, there is some level scaling. I wonder if that is mentioned somewhere, where you can start the adventure at a lower level and then reduce the dangers. Oh, gosh, I wish I remember where that exactly was. In this first chapter. There we go. Lower level and higher level of characters. If your character is 7th, 8th, or 9th level, you can remove creatures as noted. So there is some level scaling for lower level, at least over to 7th. You can't quite play like Lost Mine of Phandelver and then, I think, jump to this campaign, because I believe you end at like 4th or 5th level with Phandelver. So there's a little bit of a gap there. And also, awkwardly, a lot of the main campaigns that run from 1 to 12 or 1 through 11 would make you a little bit high for this campaign, although you can scale it to level 11 simply by not letting them level during chapter 1. So you're supposed to start around 10th level. Hopefully you can make it work, because it probably works best if you start with one of those myriad of other campaigns available out there and then transition into Eve of Vecna. And you can do that, or Eve of Ruin. And you can do that fairly simply and throw in that prologue adventure somewhere, even though it doesn't really have much context to do with anything, because you get the main adventure hook during this opening chapter where you end up becoming linked to Vecna. So you're hired by Lord Neverwinter himself, because again, you're level 10. We don't really have to have this big, like, I don't know. The adventure hook is a lot more refreshing, because it's just like, oh yeah, of course you're just badasses. So you're just been given this, you're already like working for high level government officials, and we don't have to worry about all these going through hoops to get your level 1 adventurer to somewhere. Instead, it's like, no, you guys are in Neverwinter currently. You're working for Lord Neverwinter. Although the quest is like, hey, you got to go rescue these nobles from who have been kidnapped from Neverdeath Graveyard. And you go down there, and it is basically a giant dungeon crawl, which is nice. And you're supposed to rescue these folks, and then you end up discovering that there's a giant Vecna cult down here, which is using the power of secrets to funnel that power, I guess, to Vecna, because Vecna is in the midst or nearing the end of, I guess that's the Eve part, of this ritual to unmake reality and remake it in his image. It's all kind of vague and super villainy. So, the map art. Come on! What are we doing here? Damn it. Why? Why? You're Wizards of the Coast. You have all the resources available. I know you have good artists that you work with. It's crushing. It's soul crushing. Vecna has nothing on Wizards disappointing me with this map style art. This is the Dyson Logos style, which I know a lot of you are fine with. We've had arguments before in YouTube about this. I am not somebody who is nostalgic about D&D, which is going to color this review maybe a little bit. I'm very curious on thoughts of people who are very nostalgic and have all those background information, especially with a lot of settings. But I'm not somebody who like enjoys the old graph paper style maps, right? To me, I'm like, look, this is the modern era. People are using like digital VTTs. We've got all this stuff available. Even if you're playing, around the table, you can even put a monitor. And, I've seen all those cool setups where people use these full color battle maps and are awesome. I really expect amazing map art from my official 5e campaign books, especially. I also would like to see it, because I review hundreds of products on the DM's Guild. I really call attention when people give me amazing map art, and I'm sad when I don't get it, but I'm at least like, yeah, I realize like these things cost time and money and all that, but anybody has the time and the money to give me the good map art, it's Wizards of the Coast. So not every map is like this. There is another map artist who, let's see if they're actually credited here. I think I had to look at another. Sorry. I think I had to go look up the actual book credits to figure out who the other cartographer was, who did some of the map art, which looks great, but it's only like 4 of the like 30 maps are like that. So that is a big, big bummer. I'm super bummed about it. It really takes away a lot from this entire campaign, because obviously I'm reviewing it on Roll20 and I'm looking at how things look on Roll20. There are details, at least. It's not completely bare bones and like that. Like there's nice little, coffins are represented, cages. For some cases, other cases though, they still do that stupid thing where it's like, oh, there's a cool statue here, and the artist just draws like a circle with a star on it or something. But you can see like there's pipes here. Like there are some details on some of these maps, but still, it is imminently frustrating for me. However, that being said, I think there are some really cool dungeon designs in this campaign, which helps. I don't think it makes up for it necessarily. Well, I guess that's the good part, right? Because technically the art part is way easier to fix. There are people out there, hopefully, that are already working on this. And certainly as somebody who has run even whole campaigns that don't have, map art, there are resources out there you can use and work with folks. Purchase their things, buy their stuff that create map art. That's a whole industry basically where artists will come in and basically make up the difference of what I'm looking for. But the good news is the content here, the actual dungeon crawls and things that are involved, are actually quite good, which I appreciate. This is a really fun little dungeon crawl with a lot of people to rescue. Again, your goal is to rescue all these folks. Notice also, I want to call attention to this, Roll20 has provided token art for everybody. There are very, very few tokens that do not have token art, which is something I have run into in the past. If there's like a certain variant of a creature or a named person, if they don't have art, they'll just be like, here's their name on a token, which looks like shit, right? That is not the case here for like 90% of the tokens, maybe 99%. Instead, we get really cool artwork, even if that person does not have their own bespoke character sheet, to where you open it up and you're like, oh, this is actually just the generic mage, stat block or something. Some of them might, I think Jarrett here does have, so like he's got his own handout, for example, so it makes sense why you have token art for him, but like these others are just like, so I'm not sure where these token art came from, if they came from a part in the book or from a different, official source or something, but that's really a huge thumbs up that Roll20 did that by providing all this token art, because that is exactly the kind of thing that I want Roll20 to do, which is, hey, we're playing with all these tokens. I also just noticed they've flipped some of the tokens. That's kind of interesting. I wonder why they did that. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Look at they're facing 2 different directions. Obviously you can do that. Yeah, you can flip horizontal. That's funny. I've never seen them do that before. That seems like overkill, but does it make it look different? I don't know. But I really do enjoy the fact that we get these cool token art for like named NPCs that are a little more important, instead of just using the generics or using that name thing. So that is a huge thumbs up for me. All right, so I gotta be going along, because we can't be spending too long and go through every single dungeon. But in this one, it ends up with a very cool, I think I've shown this picture a couple times, is the situation. You find the last prisoner. The the villain here, Kendry, is trying to extract a secret magically and shunt that power to Vecna. But because the players interrupt this ritual, everybody gets shunted into Evernight in the Shadowfell, which is actually like a bonus region you get to visit. Kind of just in the very end of Chapter 1. We're still in Chapter 1 for this whole thing. The Shadowfell part is very, very brief, by the way. You just get teleported there with this Elden dude, and you meet like an old lady vampire, and then She tells you how to get back home, which you go back to the graveyard, disappointingly. And then you end up going into this other tomb, which is pretty creepy and full of like Sorrowsworn and nasty things, Dolander Tomb. And then you end up going back to the proper material plane, Neverwinter. And importantly, this whole sequence of events creates a link between the players and Vecna. Where is that even mentioned before? Because it's very, very important. I guess this is under Dolander Tomb, maybe towards the end. And with this Vecna link, you end up being able to utilize the power of secrets. Maybe it's just included here, which I think is a really cool aspect of this campaign. Basically, you learn secrets from NPCs throughout the entire campaign. In fact, let's pull up the... where did I put it? This one, the secrets tracker. This is a good way of spelling it out. And from these secrets, you gain either a power you can use right then and there, or you can hoard these secrets, and then at the end of the camp, or I guess in the last chapter of the campaign, when you reach the last like dungeon where Vecna is, spoilers, you gain like these superpowers, kind of, not anything too crazy, and it depends on how many secrets you've acquired. I think that's a really cool effect that helps drive the theme of Vecna being all about secrets and having this power, and lets the players amass this kind of unique currency that also encourages like role-playing and encourages them to like save people and work with people. It's a really, really cool system, and I really enjoy it. Oddly, Roll20 did not include like an interactive tracking system, even though they've done this in campaigns past. Go all the way back to like the Tyranny of Dragons campaign, right? And they included the tracker for... I forget how, like getting favor with different factions or something, but they've done this in the past. There's precedent for this. I don't believe a feature they've included here in Roll20, unless I totally missed it. No, this is a parchment battle map. Okay. So I think having that as an interactive tool would be very nice. Instead, it's just here in the compendium, but there's a nice bit here where it mentions all the way the players can find secrets, who they learn it from. Now, learning the secret gives it to you that you can spend it, and then you can spend the secret, literally like whispering it out loud, and then you like forget it from memory or something weird. And that gives you, what is the buff? I think it's advantage on everything for like a minute. Like it's a pretty big buff. Yeah, when a character spends a secret, every character in the party gains advantage on D20 rolls for 1 minute. Holy shit. That is a huge buff. Goodness sakes. Every character for basically an entire combat, right? I mean, technically you can do it during a death trap dungeon or something. You really need all advantage, but like an entire combat, essentially gain advantage on all rolls. That is nuts. What a huge ability. But you're spending it, and what the players may not realize is that, yeah, there's one exception. The character spend the secret, or sorry, that's not what they mentioned. But anyway, there's a bit in, oh, here we go. Keeping secrets. When they confront Vecna in Chapter 11, they can use the number of secrets they've kept to help thwart the Lich God's ritual of remaking. There's a cool bit in Chapter 11, which hopefully we'll get to at the end of this review, where depending on how many secrets they've not used, they've earned but haven't spent, then they gain like these extra powers at the very end. I really love the system. It's very awesome. However, a thought occurred to me as a DM. What happens if a player character dies, perish the thought, during this campaign? You have to bring in another player character. Well, are they still involved in this system, right? Because technically you get that link as you're like part of your inciting incident at the end of this dungeon crawl. You get linked to Vecna supernaturally to where that's how you can earn these secrets. I immediately thought of that. I was like, well, how do we justify that like in universe? I mean, you'd have to do it in some way because you'd hate to have the player like miss out on this insane buff and cool system. But that was a concern of mine, is because this thing is like a one-time connection that happens. Or maybe you have another character show up and that's part of their background. It's like, hey, I'm also like connected to Vecna. Whoa, what are the odds? I guess I should join you guys like that. Probably the way that I would do it, but kind of an interesting thought I had if you end up losing a player character at some point. All right, so after that, there's an interesting part where at the end of Chapter 1, I believe it even says like what's next. The character's adventure's over when they return to Neverwinter. Like, they did it, right? They solved the quest. Chapter 1 is kind of separate from everything else. You can play chapter, which maybe might be interesting if you scale the difficulty down, then you can do chapter 1, what really the prologue adventure should have been, which is, hey, because of the events here in this kind of self-contained adventure that involved Vecna cultists, you are now linked to Vecna, and thus eventually that's what starts off the main campaign. Instead, it's like, hey, here's the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 starts the next level, but hey, if you want to do anything else, then you can do other things and do other adventures. So interesting bit there where it gives the DM a little bit more freedom, but because of the way the levels are designed, you're really going to want to probably go from chapter 1 to chapter 2. But I thought that was not an odd, but just an interesting way to kick off this adventure, basically. Instead of this having this be this major like sense of urgency, basically, instead it's like, okay, we did it, we saved the nobles, but also we're hearing like Vecna whispers, so that's kind of weird. You know, it's like maybe do that earlier, have in the middle of other adventures, and then you can kind of continue on with the actual campaign, which kicks off in chapter 2, which I think I'm going to pull up the Sanctum. This is an example of one of the color maps we get. Now, this one does technically have grid battle map feature, but this is your home base. You're not going to be fighting here, I think, at all, if I'm trying to remember correctly. But this is the home base that you return to basically in between adventures. So you are, your party, to start off chapter 2 and start off the campaign, is teleported to Sigil, to, I think it's Illustrial's home? Maybe? Yeah, I think it's her headquarters. She's like the immortal 700-year-old daughter of Mystara, by the way. I was not too familiar with her character. Tasha and Mordenkainen I've heard of because they appear in 5th edition frequently. And yes, we do get full stat blocks for all these NPCs, which is pretty great. And it's kind of a mistake. The 3 of them are aware of Vecna's shenanigans, and they were trying to cast a very high-powered wish spell in order to thwart Vecna. However, this doesn't work because of a very major reason, which is a very major spoiler for this campaign, in that this is not actually Mordenkainen. This is Kaz, the vampire, who is a major character in Vecna lore. The 2 of them, there was an image I showed earlier, Vecna's history. The 2 of them were good buddies. I maybe just buddy, maybe lovers, I'm not sure. In fact, this part of the thing I would do is make this history a lot more interesting and focus a lot more on the characters, because that's what's going to make this a cool story. Anyway, Kaz was a former lieutenant of Vecna, because was given the Sword of Kaz, which is this sentient evil sword, began corrupting him and had him rise up and basically try to take out Vecna and usurp him. Vecna ended up winning, and Kaz was turned into, I'm very much paraphrasing, turned into a vampire and rules his own domain of dread. And now that Vecna's doing all these other evil shenanigans, Kaz has risen up, escaped the domain, using a magical crown, can magically appear as anybody. In this case, Mordenkainen has intercepted, summons and gone here. And his whole goal is to take out Vecna himself, but also like supplant Vecna and be like the real head honcho or something. So there's a real missed opportunity, by the way. We're making this character so interesting and trying to like not turn him good, but at least like enemy of my enemy is my friend, and just do like, man, there's none of that here, which is really disappointing. Instead, he's really a mustache twirling villain, which is so crushing, because it could have been really interesting. And I love the betrayal aspect here, which you don't know until like chapter 9, until after you've all gathered the Rod of 7 Parts. So to continue the story, the wish spell didn't work because this isn't really Mordenkainen. So they're like, what the fuck happened? That should have worked. And instead it summoned all the players here because the player characters are tied to Vecna. And Mordenkainen / Kaz suggests, well, why don't we gather the Rod of 7 Parts scattered all over the multiverse, and we'll let these folks find them because they're clearly linked to Vecna and they seem strong and they want to play D&D. So the players are like, okay, yeah. And that's what kicks off the adventure. It's a very simple fetch quest for chapters 2 through 8, which is you're gathering the Rod of 7 Parts. Each one is hidden in a different area. They just happen to know, I guess, where the next part is, which is in the Underdark. And then once you gather each part, it magically tells you where the next part is. And we're in Sigil already. We've got portals. We can portal to each area. Boom. We're like skipping all the travel, all the investigation part of it. And it's just porting to all of these different areas and locating the Rod of 7 Parts for the next like 7 chapters. That's all chapter 2, and then chapter 2 continues with, and there's the Cause to Destroy, where you can actually find, that's not the picture, you can technically discover his betrayal, but it's very, very difficult. That's what he actually looks like. You're supposed to be tricked, basically, but there is a bit of in here like, oh, what happens if the party like discovers his ruse, or all these other things that happen, which I appreciate. But I love this aspect. The betrayal aspect is really cool. It's one of my favorite parts of this story, although I would have gone even further by making Kaz a more interesting and conflicted person, especially because he didn't have the Sword of Kaz, so he's not even like, I don't think, being corrupted currently, and made that a more interesting relationship dynamic and more meaningful for the players, versus he's like just another villain who kind of screws up the plans at the very end. And it's still a cool story moment, but I would have done even more things with it. And then chapter 2 continues. Again, that first piece is in the Underdark in a Lulth dungeon with like evil drow worshippers with a fucking spider dragon, which is so cool looking. As I show you what this thing looks like. Look at this. First of all, the token's amazing, but then the actual creature, Greyhawk. That's not even the good picture I was looking at. Oh, where's the... It's a handout. Shoot. I guess I'll have to go to the actual... Let's see. Web's Edge. So we can see me navigate Roll20. Now, the handouts are included, which I appreciate, in the journal right here. And you can link to... everything is linked. And they're placed before the actual room. So if you're reading this sequentially as a DM... you would know to show your players like this handout first before they get to the room, and then they're seeing the picture while you're reading the description. I don't know if I've actually seen them do that before in Roll20, and I really appreciate that little detail here, which is pretty cool. I love this map art, by the way. There's so many... Sorry, not the map art, the handout art. I don't like the map art at all, but the handout shit is amazing and looks incredible. And there's so many cool scenes. It focuses on like the characters and the dungeons and everything that's going on. This is it. This is the picture I was looking for. This is so cool. That's awesome. I don't know how to pronounce those creatures. The yokels or something. Cletus, the slack-jawed yokel. Look at this spider dragon. Everybody's like, yeah, that's a fucking spider dragon. How cool is that? The players are level, I think, 11 right now when they're fighting this thing. And of course, it's the rod is in this creature's nest. By the way, that's basically how most of these chapters go, is you end up going somewhere, there's a big-ass dungeon, and the rod is with the boss. But that being said, there is some cool variety throughout these various areas. In fact, the next chapter may be one of my favorites, where you go to the Spelljammer universe into a ship that has crashed into the corpse of a dead god, which is all nasty, unraveling craziness. And the ship is actually blown apart into 3 different areas. And you'll see what's also one of my favorite maps on Roll20. This is by the other map artist. I really apologize. I thought their name was listed here somewhere, but I don't think it's... I must have looked it up somewhere else. But this is a fantastic... map. I'm gonna have to zoom out a bit, but it shows the kind of cutaway view right here with the 3 different sections: the stern, the starboard, and the prow. And then the actual top-down battle map, again, full color, and it looks really cool. You can see how the dynamic lighting ends up looking, which is really nice. And this one is a full-on, not what you think, which is like, oh, we're gonna be battling around in space and stuff. No, you're actually, the ship has only recently crashed. The crew members are all fairly friendly and all have different issues and quests and stuff to help them. There's like a treant who's trying to help save the blink dog from being attacked by monsters, and there's the Deva captain who's like trying to fix her prosthetic like wings. I get big like Furiosa vibes or something. She's got like a fucking prosthetic leg and wing. And then there's a hidden secret death slot, I believe one of them, who is like corrupting everybody and was responsible for like the crash and all this. Basically, it's a lot of cool like role-playing and social things you have to do in this situation while still being in this exotic area. This is a really, really interesting location. It's a fun use of Spelljammer. I think Spelljammer lends itself particularly well to this kind of format, which is like a bite-sized, exciting adventures versus some of the other ones like Dragonlance, which is more about this really long, like story, rich campaign that maybe doesn't end up coming off quite as well with these little bites. I mean, this is like you're ordering the sampler from the D&D store, and they're just going to give you, okay, here's your one empanada, here's your one enchilada and all this, but it's like, here's your little Spelljammer, here's your little Dragonlance, here's your little Greyhawk, here's your little Ravenloft. Chances are you're going to end up liking one or two of those a lot more than the others, and you're going to wish you were just playing that campaign, which is usually what happens when you order an appetizer or a sampler. But that's what you're going to get with this campaign. You're going to get these little bite-sized adventures, and this one also ends up with a giant monster fight at the end, despite all the role-playing stuff. So I really like this one, and probably is one of the best showcases of what you're going to get with this campaign. And Chapter 4, in fact, does it really run through? There's one that runs through all the different rods and where to find them. Let's see, it's under Wizards 3, where they talk about where are the rods. It is not. Is it under Rise Lich God? It is not. Surprise development. They talk about where all the different rods. Okay, rod of 7 parts. That talks about the rod itself. That's fine. There was a section. It's bad. Yeah, I'm under pressure on doing the review video, right? I should have had these tabs open, I guess, but I would have a million tabs where I'm trying to figure out where the piece. There's a nice part where it lists where all the pieces are and like what the regions are, but I guess I can just go over them manually because I remember everything. Chapter 4, the next piece is in Eberron. This is in the Mournlands, basically right at ground zero, where the that big magical bomb went off in Eberron that kind of ended the entire war and got rid of an entire nation. And there's a bunch of dead hulking warforged called Colossus. The storyline here is there's like two different factions that are kind of at odds with each other, like former veterans of the war and former warforged, who are like pilgriming here, they call that. And the final dungeon crawl, because they're all dungeon crawls, is inside of a gigantic warforged who's also cut into a mountain. So you can see right here is that I'm putting at the screen now. You can see me. Eric, why don't you just go to the actual map itself? Oh yeah, I can do that. Landro. So you can see here's like the legs, there's the hips, and it goes all the way up to the head. We're also having a cave here, so pretty cool. I like the enemies here. There's also like a group of warforged who are currently battling you and throughout this area. And the one thing that this campaign really lacks for me, however, is a satisfying conclusions, I think is how I would say it, for all of these various areas, because each one is a self-contained story. Like you're going to a different universe practically in every one of these chapters, and it's its own. You're in the middle of a completely different situation each time, so you're meeting completely new NPCs, there's new areas, and you have to like resolve that whole area as one. And as you can see, a lot of these, there's not really any like epilogue or a satisfying story aspect to a lot of these. There's a real Metroid thing that happens, by the way. The whole Colossus here ends up exploding at the end, which I did like. But other than like one or two of them, I don't know. I feel like there was something that could have happened that connects. One of the things that works best when you're doing these kind of like going to all these different areas is you pick up allies along the way, right? And they're like you're forming this party by the end, and that's kind of a fun trope in a lot of fantasy. This doesn't happen here. Instead, your only real allies along the way are the Wizards 3, the Tasha Illustrial, and the foe Mordenkainen, who's actually a villain. Everybody else is just a complete self-contained story that you're working with, and some of them you're working with very, very closely. There's a lady in the Strahd, the Ravenloft one, where you end up really aiding her, and she's like your primary NPC ally in there. And then there's one in Dragonlance where you're helping a bunch of the werewolves, and you're helping out like their whole clan, and there's a specific whole werewolf thing in there. Like it's nice, but I don't know. You really feel like you lose something by having this kind of format that's like this one and done with all these areas, and you're like, all right, well, see ya. Which I guess is true of a lot of adventures anyway, but it feels more like a lot of disconnected. It almost feels like an anthology, like, something like Candlekeep Mysteries or like Radiant Citadel or one of those, like where they're so separate from each other. But that's also kind of what I guess you would have to kind of end up doing if you were doing this format of like, well, we want to visit all these different areas. So how are going to connect them together? Well, they all have the rod of 7 parts. And as you gather the rod, they all have their own special abilities. But in terms of the story and the characters, I would probably come up with some way of having the players, I don't know, went to like collect allies and bring them to Sigil, and then have like have those allies be meaningful in the final battle or something, to where it really feels like, oh man, we've made all these friends along the way. Maybe I'm just a dork like that. So the Eberron was nice. The Barovia one is fine. You return to Death House, which I thought was really interesting. This is like the starter adventure, by the way, from Curse of Strahd. You return to the Death House, but you're like level, 14 or something by now, so it's obviously been scaled way higher. It's still very creepy. And then there's actually a scene where Strahd himself shows up at the end after you've done everything, but it's like this. It's not really a boss fight. It's like this climactic sequence of going through these haunted areas, and he basically, your goal is to try to escape from him by being kind enough to your one NPC. I forget her name. I think it starts with an S. I don't know. I thought it was weird. I thought it was weird that you get to interact with Strahd here, and then it's at the Death House and all that. So maybe this one kind of lost me a little bit. But it is thematic for Ravenloft, and I guess it's interesting to return to a specific area. I think it's the only one that actually returns to a known region, though. Chapter 6 is the Dragonlance one. This one, I thought, was shocking that it doesn't involve Draconians, doesn't involve war, doesn't really involve any areas that I'm familiar with in Dragonlance, which granted, I'm very much a lapsed fan at this point. So I didn't get a whole lot of Dragonlance context here. There's a whole bit where you're helping a werewolf clan basically fight back against a rival enemy. There's a couple different sequences involved where you have to help this one guy grab this like fruit from an evil dryad, and then you help like rescue his people, and then you go into this massive dungeon, which is, again, a fantastic dungeon. The Three Moons Vault is humongous, like 40 rooms. It's your classic like enemy stronghold dungeon where there's guards everywhere, and there's people you can rescue, and there's infiltrations you can do. So it's just neat from a dungeon standpoint, but I don't know, it didn't feel very Dragonlance-y for me necessarily. So that was the Dragonlance one. Chapter 7, this is the Greyhawk one, which I guess I didn't realize Orth is the actual region. I guess like Kryn is the Dragonlance world. Now this one I'll compare to the Ravenloft one, because in Ravenloft you got to go to the Death House, right? In this one, you go to an area that's very clearly meant to be Tomb of Horrors. By the way, you teleport in, you're in the middle of fighting a Kraken, so that tells you like what level you're at by now. But it's not Tomb of Horrors, and it's not Tomb of the Nine Gods. It's the Tomb of Wayward Souls. And it isn't actually a Serac, it's, I'm not kidding, Rarak. It's like discount off-brand a Serac. Mom, we want a Serac. We have a Serac at home. This is fucking Rarak. It's super bizarre that they did that, but then they did like the actual Death House in Ravenloft. I thought that was weird. I love this dungeon though. I thought it's like, okay, this is what happens when you take good dungeon designers, which I do think the Wizards crew, I know we like to shit on Wizards of the Coast, and I did earlier with the whole art thing, but I do think they can make a damn good dungeon crawl. And there are a lot of damn good dungeon crawls in this adventure. This is your Death Trap dungeon. And if you were to say, all right, Wizards of the Coast team, make me a 5th edition modern, awesome version of Tomb of Horrors that's not Tomb of Horrors, but will evoke that concept of a death trap dungeon with more traps and puzzles than combat, and is very challenging and high level, but isn't bullshit like so much of Tomb of Horrors is, which is like just cruel, kind of stupid bullshit that's designed to like fuck up the players. This isn't like that, which is why I'm in like it's a modern version where it still feels like you're meant to succeed, but not without a lot of challenge and, thought process and having to work your way through this actual dungeon. So I really would give a pretty big thumbs up to this entire sequence. This dungeon, it's got the false entrances. It's got something I think which is more from Lost Caverns of Zajkan, which is like the altars that all go in different areas and teleportations. I guess the original 2 4s did that as well. Teleports to different areas of the dungeon. It has, all these dead ends and just cool puzzles. Like, it's a really awesome... I read this entire dungeon, which I don't think I did that for all the others. I skimmed through them and got a lot of the gist of it, but this one I was just enthralled by. And the end of it, you meet this... It's a simulacrum of a Serac, and he's, like, sad. He, like, doesn't want to be a you don't want to do this. He's like, fuck, I don't want to be like this junior Acererak, off-brand Acererak. And the players can like talk him into like coming out and allying with the archaeologist at the end. I fucking love that. I was like, yes, this is the kind of shit I want in D&D. This is such a hilariously awesome twist. They get through all of this. They think they're going to have to fight Acererak at the end. Instead, it's this simulacrum. He's like, no, I don't want to fucking do this anymore, man. I just want to like go... I forget what he wants to do, but yeah, he volunteers. Is with the party to lend his knowledge of the tomb to help the archaeologists in their excavation. Are apprehensive, but nonetheless accept the aid. It doesn't hurt them. He won't return to Sigil with the characters, whereas the magic stains him might extinguish if he leaves Orth. He hopes to make a home on the Isle of Serpents with anyone who welcomes him. He just wants to live his best life. I love this so much. That's amazing. So this whole sequence in Greyhawk with the tomb, with the like not Tomb of Horrors, but to me it's better. I think it's better than OG Tomb of Horrors. Absolutely fabulous. Super thumbs up. And you know what? Although you can't really do this very well in Roll20 because I don't believe you can break up the chapters individually as add-ons, but you could drop in any of these sequences and dungeons into any campaign because, again, they're very self-contained. The whole thing at the end is that you get the Rod of the Seventh Part, but you could put whatever magic item or just use them as dungeon crawls, like wherever you need to. And a lot of them, like the... this one, even the Dragonlance one, pretty much all of them, but, well, you could even put Death House, like, in Forgotten Realms if you wanted to. Like, probably the only one that doesn't really make sense in the Forgotten Realms is the Spelljammer and Eberron ones. I think all the other ones you could probably slot in there, but as drop-in. So that's part of the advantage of having these be kind of disconnected from each other. The final rod piece is in Avernus, which I thought was technically Forgotten Realms, but maybe not. Maybe everybody uses Avernus. In a casino in hell, which is absolutely amazing and could be used as some kind of cool finale to Keys to the Golden Vault, for example. Fabulous map here, although this is one of what we call an illustrative kind of region map and not one that you would actually use as a battle map. But as terms of an illustrative region map, it's amazing. You can see all the different rooms. There's a racetrack with nightmare horses. There's a creepy maze you can work your way around. There's a lot of different games of chance you can work with. The goal here is just to befriend one of the I forget what they call them, the game runners or something. There's pit lords that literally guard, CR20 pit lords that guard everything, because by now you're fucking level 19 or something. And then you get your way to the Dragon's Pride, where literally you go all the way to the next door of Tiamat. You can see on the bottom it says, to Tiamat's lair, guarded by an ancient red dragon. Because again, we're high-ass level right now. That's kind of stuff you got to throw at the party. Which is amazing. And you don't quite... I think actually you do get to talk to Tiamat for a hot second. You're like, hey, I need the rod to take out Vecna. And Tiamat's like, fine, or something. It seems a little bit brief for that sequence of events, but pretty cool that just... I don't know. I like the fact that Whenever's like, oh yeah, because we're so high level, we can now deal with these increased threats. This one, good combination of like role playing and skill checks. Feels very much like the Spelljammer one. There's a really good balance here as I've gone over everything in terms of this is like a straightforward dungeon crawl with a lot of combat and enemies, or this one is like a death trap dungeon, or this one isn't really a dungeon. It's like dealing with just people with problems, or this one's just a fucking casino in hell. Very, very cool variety of stuff happening. So finally, 40 minutes later, we've done all of our Rod of 7 parts. We've collected everything. There's an awkward part where you have to have Mordenkainen take the rod from the party and say, okay, I've got this. You all go do a long rest, and we'll do everything from there. And it's a little bit tricky, where I appreciate at least they say, hey, if the players decline, here's the different sequence of events you can do. But you kind of need this to happen to push the players into the next chapter, which is the Mordenkainen reveals himself as Kaz, but like off screen, which is a little disappointing. I would actually... do this as a cutscene. I think like an in-game cutscene. I think your players will allow you to do this very rarely, but I think you can possibly get away with it if it's cool, and have the big reveal happen. He takes the rod, he disappears into the plane of Pandemonium, or Pandismus, what do they call it? In order to, his plan is to free a demon god, and then with the demon god's help, I guess he'll take out Vecna. I was a little bit more confused about the plan here that he has to like reveal at the very end. So that's chapter 9, where you end up going to you basically just follow him there to the plane of Pandemonium, which is where I think the rest of the campaign actually takes place, although you can always teleport back to Sigil if you need to. And then you end up, let's see, where's the big, in Pandasmos, Panda World, which is, if you wanted your big multiversal war setting, this is it. In fact, does it have... There's a really cool image that is somewhere, maybe in Carapace Ridge, that really shows this whole war happening. Digging for handouts is not easy if I don't know where exactly they are. Okay, I don't know exactly where they are. But this is the cool picture of him like trying to free the wolf demon god, Miska. So at this point, this is one of those rare cases, by the way, where the Roll20 did not have any kind of art for these spider fiend creatures, which is a bummer. The party can choose what they want to do and how they want to do it, but they have to take out a general of Lolth, I think, because Lolth is allied with Vecna. They have to stop the wolf spider guy from appearing, which is in the, I guess we can go to the Ruinous Citadel map, which is right here. That's this guy who looks pretty crazy. That's Miska. He is coming through the portal in a very classic kind of Diablo-ish fashion where you have to just stop him, and you can scale the battle, but like he only has legendary actions or something. He's not even supposed to be a full combatant, even though he's like a CR. That's why, because he's like a CR 24 or something. Yeah, I nailed it. CR 24. Miska the wolf spider. And you stop him, and basically you're doing all this to draw out Kos, and then you fight Kos in either the Cliffside Redoubt or one of these other locations, and you just kind of take him out. It's really, frankly, anticlimactic. This was a hugely missed opportunity to me. Like, this should have been a big thing where you can finally like talk to him, and maybe he's gone crazy because of his hatred of Vecna, but I don't know. I would have done a lot more with this sequence, because I think everything up till now has been really good, right? I like the initial, like, oh shit, he's really, like, Mordenkainen was never there to begin with. Like, what a shocking thing to have happen. And then the other two can like tell you like which it says like, oh, and Tasha and Illustrial should be like exhausted or injured, so they can't accompany the players because they're like fucking CR25 wizards. You don't want to put them in the party. But they can hopefully relay information about who Kos is and all this background information. And I think there could have been a lot more interesting story stuff to come from this, because I liked it all the way up till now, where basically he's just like a mustache twirling villain. He's like, yeah, I got to take out Vecna for myself and take his power and all that. And I think it would have been cooler if it was like, no, I got to be the one to kill Vecna. And then the party can be like, well, you're blinded by your hatred and you need to, step down and join us, and we can help you take out Vecna. And all like, there could have been like a really cool story thing to have happen here, which I thought they were setting up, and they really didn't. They kind of dropped the ball here with Kos. So disappointing there. But that's the end of chapter 10. Once you defeat Kos, he then tells you, or you learn from him how it works, the location of Vecna's ritual, which takes you to chapter 11, which is the Eve of Ruin, where you finally make it to Vecna. We've recovered the Rod of 7 parts now, which is super powerful. We can, go back to Sigil and long rest and all that. And then you appear, the final sequence is this Vecna's Grasp, which is a very plain map. It's kind of funny. This is not where the final battle is. In this area, you go to these 3 different rooms. So Vecna's remaking reality, and there's like whispers of... There's like demos, like video trailers of the new world he's making. And you have to unlock the way to Vecna, you have to go through all of these 3 areas. So one of them, which again would have been amazing with Kos, or, with the story there, is you go to the Torment of Kos, which is just like the party witnessing like more of the cool backstory, and Kos is like super sad and depressed, and like Vecna's literally like relishing over how much his former friend and ally is like just in a sad state. Like one whole point of this whole thing is for Vecna just to shit on Kos. So that relationship is so good, and it should have been explored more. So you have to you're supposed to touch a certain item and like expend a spell slot or something in order to progress through these whole things. The Neverwinter King site lets you go to Neverwinter, where you see Lord Neverember has been turned into a undead death knight or something. You have to go stop that from happening. It's kind of more of a social thing, but with a huge battle with all the dead guards and stuff. Like Neverwinter's turned into almost Everdeath at that point. And then Dead Gods lets you go into the Astral Sea again. You fight an Astral Dreadnought who is wounded, or I guess the Astral Dreadnought's being attacked. you have to end up inside of it because the Astral Dreadnought has a donjon in the donjon in its gullet, and you get teleported into this battle map where you fight like a bunch of eyemongers and a cosmic horror. It's, we are level 20, by the way, for all of chapter 11. So if you're wondering, gosh, does this campaign just end where you're like, oh, we reached chapter 20 at the very... No, you are chapter 20 for all of this sequence. So you get to finally unleash all your level 20 abilities, and we get to throw like crazy big powerful creatures at you, and it's just all kinds of insanity, which I love. And then the final area, the Cave of Shattered Reflection, this is where finally, I teased it earlier, all those secrets come into play. So you can see if you kept secrets but didn't spend them, then you get all these additional buffs. Even if you only have like 3 to 6, each character starts the encounter with inspiration, which is pretty huge. Or maybe you can gain the effects of the haste spell and not the disadvantage effects of it, which is the lethargy afterwards if you've kept like a bunch of secrets. So that's a really cool appeal that I'm not sure the players are supposed to be aware of. It's kind of a bonus they get if they've been collecting secrets at the end, and you deal with Vecna and all of his glorious stat block, although he is supposed to be, reduced because of the fact that he's been doing this big ritual. So I feel like the campaign and the ending is pretty earned and pretty fun for going through all those sequences. I just wish the whole cost thing had been much better, because it could have been just a really neat RP moment for the players to become more invested in the story, in what is otherwise a pretty basic story for the overarching story, and then it has all those like mini stories again, like the werewolves with the Dragonlance, or the two factions in Eberron, that have these self-contained storylines along the way, which range from okay to really cool, but the overarching storyline I think could have been improved quite a bit more. And then the maps, of course, we do get some good maps. I've shown you most of the good ones that are existing, probably like 4 or 5. The rest of them are unfortunately this basic map art, which is not as great. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for this hour-long review of Vecna Eve of Ruin Pro. I think it's a worthy high-level campaign that feels earned. I mentioned that. Like a lot of campaigns, they go to level 11 or 12, and then the party's artificially boosted for some way. They become like giants, or they get the 9 trickster gods inside them so they could take on some threat that they're not meant to fight. This one, you legit level up to 20. You're 20 for that whole final chapter. It makes sense why Vecna has been weakened somewhat. So because he's been doing this big ritual, all of it just makes sense to create a really nice pacing, scaling situation for the party. And it feels like a proper high-level campaign that's not just about like going deeper into a dungeon and things getting stronger. It's like, no, you're really taking on like power. Like you're going into a freaking casino in Avernus that's got like pit lord masters and all this shit. Like it feels very nicely earned. Pro features just about every D&D setting and infamous area, from Avernus to the Underdark, Dragonlance to Spelljammer. Sorry, Dark Sun fans. Athos, you are still not invited. You haven't been represented in 5e yet, but you don't get also the little side ones like Ravnica from like Magic the Gathering or anything like that. But for all of those main settings, I think it does do a really good sampler appetizer job of giving you content from all of those. Some of them better than others, I think. Like the Greyhawk, like not Tomb of Horrors one is really great. The Eberron, being able to go through a freaking Warforged Colossus, fighting a bunch of Warforged along the way, is fantastic. For example, the Spelljammer one, like most of them are really, really fantastic. Pro, an excellent variety of interesting dungeon designs and memorable scenarios. That's the one thing I went through the most of throughout this whole campaign. I don't need to rehash, but I loved the variety of events and situations you have to accomplish, and there's so many really cool dungeon designs. Even if I'm not a fan of the art itself, the content is still great. Pro, secrets as a special power and currency that the party earns throughout the campaign. This is a unique aspect of this adventure. I think works really, really well. It's probably up there with like the Icewind Dale secrets, although the secrets as written in Icewind Dale, I had to change a lot in my campaign to make it more interesting. But this one is something that I wouldn't change, which is a praise, right? Like I would run the secrets as is. I think they're all cool secrets. The way it rewards the players for helping NPCs and befriending NPCs and gaining information. And then you turn that into like a mechanical benefit the players can spend. But also, if they have delayed gratification, they say, hey, let's just not spend these secrets. And you somehow tease the fact that you think like gathering these
will make you more powerful in the end or something, or maybe you don't. Maybe you just say, hey, you get a bonus, and the players go willy-nilly, and at the end you kind of drop the bomb. It's like, hey, you've got, these 4 secrets you kept, so now you get this kind of buff, and you feel like had you been more careful with your secrets, maybe you could have been more powerful at the end. I don't know what would be more satisfying, but I think it's a really cool aspect, and I would there's no way I would run this campaign without using the secrets thing, because it's so thematic to Vecna as well. And Pro, a huge amount of tokens, and nearly every single creature and NPC has token art, which is awesome. This has one of my favorite collections of tokens since maybe the Dragonlance adventure, in terms of all the different token content we got from Roll20, and the fact that on the map, except for almost the very end with those spider fiends, I think every single entity has token art, which makes things look that much better. I do have some criticisms, however. Cons. Chapters, for the most part, lack satisfying epilogues. In fact, I think there's only even the adventure itself lacks really an epilogue, I think. There was only 1 or 2. I mean, you can see this next step area is so short, that actually had a cool bit. The Greyhawk one where it talks about Rarak and all that. And I think there was the Warforged one. No, that one doesn't. Yeah, not even the Spelljammer one's anything either. So a lot of these, it just lacks, because, you're helping these people. There's no epilogue section. And I feel like, normally an epilogue would be the end of the campaign. But if any adventure needed epilogues throughout every chapter, it should have been this one, because each one is a self-contained, you're, helping those people, you help them, you're done, you're not going back there. Give me some little epilogue about what's going on there and some satisfaction that we did something there. Some kind of better connective tissue maybe between these adventures as well. That's kind of one of my big story complaints. My other big story complaint is all about Koss. I think Koss's role and character is a hugely missed opportunity. I love his inclusion. I love the fact that he's Mordenkainen in disguise. I love that he does this big betrayal sequence, and that one chapter is basically just like this big story moment. I think that's amazing and works well in the context of the story and helps throw a huge monkey wrench into things. But the fact that he's just another mustache twirling villain who's just doing bad things, and the player has to go fight him as another villain, is very disappointing to me story-wise. I think there could have been a lot more interesting things, and that would probably be the number one thing I would change in this campaign. There's actually not a lot I would change, which again is high praise, map art notwithstanding. But that would be the one thing I would change, is to make the Koss-Vecna relationship a lot more interesting, and make Koss's character just a lot more interesting, and able to chat with him and really get down to the bottom of things. Final con, of course, is the map art style. Dyson Logos, I'm sure you're a wonderful person, but this does not do it for me when it comes to what I expect from Wizards of the Coast, what I want on map art with Roll20. It is something I would have to fix via going through other artists to actually give me more worthy maps that are worthy of this campaign. So that's a big con for me. Final verdict. The maps are disappointing, and the story is a bit too basic, but Vecna Eve of Ruin does offer a rare high-level campaign and a huge amount of fantastic dungeon ideas while speedrunning through the most infamous worlds and regions of Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you to everyone for watching this very lengthy video review. You can see my written review at rogue1.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on the channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brennan, Zenicider, Eclectic, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Corey, Big Nut, John F, John L, Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Camp Crystal, Counselor Andrew, Daryl, The Reldrin, Captain Woody 79, Stephanie, Patrick, Jason, Ismail, Amit, Lumpy, Spuds, Sharny, David William, Warden, Cutest Fox, and Harold. And gold patrons RPG, Paper Cramps, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, The Lizard Lounge, Sam, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott, Rufus, Carolyn, Jerry, Glenn, Marcus, and Mark. Thank you all very much for your support.